Welcome everyone to this Salon conversation with USA 829. I'm just going to read the brief bios of our wonderful guests who are here this evening. If I can find the right tab, right? Cathy Kwon recently joined USA 829 as the business representative for live performance after working as a company manager on Broadway for the past several years. Most recently, she was the company manager of the Broadway musical Diana. She's also worked on the Broadway productions of American Utopia, King Kong, Miss Saigon, Holiday Inn, Bright Star, A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, Hands on a Hard Body, Scandalous, Private Lives, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, and others. Prior to moving to New York, she also worked in company management at La Jolla Playhouse in San Diego, California, after receiving her degree in communications and theater from the University of California, San Diego. Carl Mulert is our other guest from USA 829. Carl has worked in the entertainment business for 40 years, in a career that is focused on the care and support of artists and how to provide better working conditions for those artists and their families. He has worked for nonprofits as a theater manager, as a literary and designers agent, and currently he serves as national business agent at United Scenic Artists USA 829. In his role as business rep for live performance, he was able to combine his negotiation skills with his intimate knowledge of the non-for-profit and design process. In his 9 years as head of the live performance department, he has been involved in contract negotiations with the Broadway League, Lort, the Metropolitan Opera, New York City Ballet, Houston Grand Opera, San Francisco Opera, and the Amusement Theater, among others, in a department that oversees and enforces over 20 individual collective bargaining agreements. In 2014, he managed a designer organizing campaign which brought in 400 new members. In 2020, he was elected by acclamation to his current position as national business agent, where he oversees all crafts and agreements represented by USA 829. He studied law at Cornell and attended the IATSE Officer Institute and is a graduate of the New York State AFL-CIO / Cornell Union Leadership Institute. I have to say, thank Amit Chandrasekhar, who is a Wingspace member and also I believe a trustee. I think he's here and he can correct me on that, with USA 829, who inspired the timing for this recently after an Off-Broadway agreement. So we want to thank him for connecting us with Carl and Cathy. To interview Carl and Cathy, we have Meredith Ries, who is a Broadway associate designer. Meredith is a New York-based set designer. She has worked as an associate on Hadestown, the SpongeBob musical, and Amelie the musical. She is also a freelance scenic designer working with companies such as Two River Theater, Pig Iron Theater, the Dance Cartel, and the Mai Theater Company, among many others. She's a member of Wingspace Theatrical Design, and a proud USA 829 member. She is coming to us live from the historic Wingspace studios in the Old American Can Factory in Gowanus. And with that, I will turn it over to Meredith, Carl, and Cathy, if you'd like to turn on your videos.
Hello. Hi, welcome to our salon. So good to see you all, and so many people. This is great. I guess I'm gonna lead off with the big headline, which is that we recently ratified a new Off-Broadway agreement. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your big headlines on what that is and what the union membership really needs to know.
Sure. Cathy, do you want to go first, or do you want me to jump in? What?
Well, I could give the big statement. And we went in really pushing to have assistance covered. I am happy to report that we were successful in expanding the scope of the contract to cover assistance. In addition to that, or in conjunction to that, we've also created a design management candidate program, a management MC program that we are hoping will help underrepresented people in the industry have an easier path to membership and to getting health coverage and getting that experience while being covered under the contract. So that was the big win for us that we went in really shooting for, and we were very happy when the Off-Broadway League was willing to talk and work through it with us. So very excited. Carl, do you want to fill in some other stuff?
Yeah, and let me start by thanking Edward and Amith and Meredith and EL and everybody at Wingspace for having. It's great to be back. I am a very large fan of this organization and really want to support the alliance between Wingspace and the union in any way we can. You know, one of the things that this negotiation taught us, you know, it's interesting. I've been thinking about this question. What are the big takeaways? What's the big thing? And I will take a step back even farther and say, it's a reminder that the union we don't only have a responsibility to our members. Our job is to lift all boats. You know, a rising tide lifts all boats. And when we started this campaign to try to improve the working lives of designers off Broadway, you know, I kept reminding people, and then we all as a group kept saying, our goal, when we'd be talking to the assistants, our goal wasn't necessarily to get assistants in the contract. Our goal was to improve the working lives of assistants off Broadway. And there were many paths to do that. I think one of the things I'm the most proud of is the number of individuals who are working as assistant designers off Broadway who are not yet members, who've reached out to us and thanked us for this and said, you know, it's astonishing to me that the union went to this level to look after people who aren't yet members. You know, my feeling is these people are what I would call pre-members. They're going to be members at some point. I mean, so doesn't it make sense to try to protect all people who are working as designers? I don't have it in front of me. My favorite quote from the USA Constitution, which I've given a lot. Kathy's heard this a lot lately. But in the preamble of our Constitution, there is a clause that talks about I'm going to paraphrase now, that the objectives of the union, of USA 829, are not just what are considered standard bread and butter union issues, but it is to improve the working conditions and the livelihoods and the life of all working designers, of all society, of all mankind. That's actually in the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's astonishing.
Ambitious.
Yeah, it is. It's like, you know, maybe we should read our own Constitution sometimes. So I'm really proud that there's one of the individuals who was really instrumental in this process was sound designer Adam Salberg, who is not yet a union member, and said to me many years ago, I promise you, Carl, if you are successful in this, the next day I will come into the office and drop off my application. And that man was in our office the day after the ratification, dropping off his application. I mean, to me, that is like huge.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I want to say, sorry, Meredith, I know you want to move, but the other big thing I want to say is this was, you know, I am new to the National Business Agent job. I know that's farther down on the list, but I am new to this job, and we all of us in the labor movement have different styles and different ways that we work. And you know, I'm not necessarily the hard hammer, hit them over the head, and not that I can't do it. I mean, I think as this Off-Broadway committee will say at 3:50 a.m., you know, I was pretty strong that we're not going to do this unless you do that. But to me, this was a testament to the relationship with an employer partner. And I believe that we will achieve our greatest successes in the labor movement if we really treat our employers as partners and not adversaries. And I think that's partly what brought this, what brought us to the success that this was a group of employers who we have a great relationship with, and we could talk openly and honestly and frankly, and they listened. And so there you go.
I actually, my question was still related to this question because it's like
Sure.
a little bit of a good yarn. Can you tell us a little bit about like what went into understanding the position of assistants in this new contract, like the kind of organizing backstage
Cathy.
shenanigans?
Cathy, do this. Sing out to Obadag.
Sing out to Obadag. I want to hear about it.
Yes. So we had a group, an organization within the union, kind of not an actual union committee, but they organize themselves, called OBADAG, Off-Broadway Assistant Design Advisory Group.
Yeah,
OBADAG.
that's right.
It was created by our members and non-members working off-Broadway as assistants. And it really started out, as Carl said, trying to improve the working conditions of the folks working off-Broadway, especially the assistants, who are usually the ones that are the most taken advantage of, just being in that situation and not being covered by any contract. So they spent the past year, I think, Carl, it was?
Year and a half.
Yeah. Polling people that worked, the assistants that worked off Broadway, speaking with people, and they were a huge part of how we were able to work to get this in. I mean, every step of the way, they were giving us stats and telling us really like what, that's great that we discussed this, but from our point of view and from the assistants, it doesn't really work, or we would prefer this. And that was really imperative to have kind of that ear. Because even as designers, I think you think what you think you know how the situation is, and I think oftentimes we forget that not being in that situation, we don't really have our ears to the ground. So it was really an amazing group of people that stepped forward, took countless hours to work and research and get us information to support what we needed to do.
Yeah, just, what Cathy is saying, it's, when you think about the fact, normally when we go into a negotiation, we do a boatload of research. We look over fee history. We look over trends in payments. We can run, various reports because we have the data on all the contracts. Well, assistant designers aren't covered.
Mm-hmm.
There's no contracts. There's no data. So the only way to collect the data was for this group of 12, astonishing individuals to make hundreds of phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
And, the first thing they did was they went through the Lortel Award archives, looked at every show that had happened off Broadway in the last 5 years, looked at the credits, figured out who the people were, and they started making phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
What were you paid? What was the period of time? So we had this amazing body of data that we would never have had if it weren't for this group.
Yeah. And were they union members, or did they come to you? Like
mostly union members. Some
a couple more, yeah.
This negotiation started in the before time, and we were expecting to negotiate in the spring of 2020. So we started talking about it in 2019, and when it became clear that assistant designers were a big piece of this, I said to a group of people who were involved in some of the larger, like just coming to the union and talking, when we would open it up and say, let's talk about off-Broadway, I was seeing some faces come a lot, and we did a couple open kind of town hall meetings. And I just said to a group of them, would you be willing to kind of form an assistant advisory group? And we felt it was really important to open it to pre-members as well, because this group is comprised of both members and people who are pre-members, and because it's so important that we were looking out for their needs and figuring out how to bring them into the union, we had to have their voices in the room. So yeah, we opened it to both.
Yeah, and we were able to take that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Meredith.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we were able to take that information, and our committee, our Off-Broadway negotiation committee, did a great job of connecting with other designers that work off-Broadway. And we had that data to be like, this is what your assistants are making.
Right.
And it was very uplifting to me that we had our committee kind of poll the other designers to say, if we can get one thing in this contract, are you okay with it being assistants? And I think the overwhelming majority was yes, that's the goal. So they were willing to give up, any kind of increase, even though given the state of where we are in the world, we don't know how likely that would be, but they didn't care. We knew that this was the priority, and just having everybody on board was really, really great.
It's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I think that the one other thing I wanted to briefly touch on before we move on is what is in the contract about this idea of kind of pre-membership and healthcare for assistants and how that will work. Because I know some of our audience is younger designers who certainly aren't yet in the union. So like, if you could give a 3 bullet point, what's about to happen?
Well, and this is again, circling back to the relationship with an employer partner. So we had this idea that kind of came out of the Broadway contract. In the Broadway contract, there's this thing called the Design Membership Candidate Program, which is on Broadway, we have a different problem, which is, general managers and producers and designers, quite frankly, trying to skirt the contract and have people do drafting and not putting it on contract, or do shopping and not putting it on contract, and trying to say it's not covered work. And so we added this program in the Broadway contract as a way to kind of say, let's bring these people into the light. Let's actually acknowledge that there is a level of work that may not be at the full assistant level, but it should be covered. It is covered work, so it should be covered. So we did it successfully on Broadway, and we thought, what if we did something like this off Broadway? But the challenge is, if there's no rate for the assistants, which there isn't, how can you have a lower rate for the membership candidates? So we had the idea, or the assistants had the idea. I don't know who had the idea, but the idea came up. What if it were a program that over a period of time, be it the number of days worked, a cumulative number of days, or 6 productions, you essentially earned membership in the union, so that you don't even have to pay the $1,500 exam initiation. One of the things that we've really heard over the last 15 months, so, there's so many aspects to systemic racism and to systems that are in place that hold underrepresented people down. And, we realized that if we don't create a pathway to membership that is available to all human beings, it's essentially a form of gatekeeping. And is that really what we want to be doing? So we came up with this idea. Again, I don't really know whose idea it was, but it takes a village. That if you do 6 shows under this program and you are credited as an assistant and you're on a contract and you're afforded all of the benefits of the contract, but you haven't yet become a member. So you can work as a membership candidate on up to 6 shows or a certain number of days, and then you have to take the exam. But if you do that, the initiation fee is only $100, which is huge. Yeah. The thing the employer contributed, which was fantastic when we pitched this idea, was they came to us and said, what if instead of paying 21 or 22%, whatever the new rates are in the contract, to pension and welfare, what if we paid the entire benefit provision to health, so that by the certain point, and what we calculated when they came up with this idea, we figured it out, that if they pay the entire benefit pot to health on the second show, if they pay it ahead of time on the second show, as of the first day, the membership candidate will qualify for healthcare, which is huge.
Yeah,
it's
that's
huge.
as a person who was once a young person in New York without health insurance, It's really remarkable. One more, I'm so sorry. One more question. What is in terms of how this membership candidate program works, is every assistant working off-Broadway who is not in the union a membership candidate? Do theaters have a specific number of membership candidates they can hire? I'm asking this in a sense of like, can they wiggle out of it?
They can't. Well, they can't. The person can. It's complicated. So if the theater is going to hire someone, there's a coverage provision in the contract, which is a standard thing in a not-for-profit theater contract. It's in the designers have coverage percentages as well. It essentially says that a certain percentage of the positions in any given season have to be covered by the contract. So for assistants, that covers both assistants who are on full union contracts and membership candidates. They all go toward the covered positions.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are not a member and you're offered a job as a covered position in an off-Broadway theater, they have to offer you the option to join the membership candidate program. You can choose not to. If an individual says, I'm never joining the union, I do 2 shows a year, I don't care. They can choose not to. In that case, a normal security provision kicks in, and once they do 3 shows, they will have to make application at full rates.
Interesting. And so then the theater also has a similar out, which is that like if they have like a certain number of union positions that they have to fill, and then after that they can get rid of the union contracts. So it's a little bit of a trade-off.
Yes.
Interesting.
It's similar in Mulert. It's with designers, as I say, it's similar in this contract with designers.
Yeah, no, I get it. I just wanted to clarify because I know
it's tricky. And what we find though is 9 times out of 10, the theaters ignore their coverage allowance. They want to hire people under the contract. So
interesting.
Yeah.
If you are a member or if you started the MC program, they cannot take that away from you. So if the coverage depends on the size of the theater or the tier. So if, let's say, a theater only has to have 50% of their assistants covered and they've met that quota and they want to hire someone that's already in the union or someone in the MC program outside of that, they can't not offer you a contract.
Right.
So
Right. That was my follow-up question.
Yeah. So once you're a union member or a MC member, that they have to offer you a contract position, regardless of the coverage.
So in a way, as the union, the more people we get into this program, the better off we are in general.
You got it. You got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and our normal initiation fees are $3,500 for a professional membership. So this is a huge, I think, savings.
It's a hefty discount.
Yeah.
Well, before we go on too far, because I feel like we should just talk a little bit about, first of all, Cathy, I'd love to know kind of who you are, what your deal is, like where you're coming from, what gets you into the union. I don't know. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am from California. I was born and raised near LA, and then I went to UC San Diego and lived in San Diego for a few years. I worked at the La Jolla Playhouse in company management and decided one day that if I wanted to continue theater, I needed to move to New York. So with the money in my pocket and the few dollars in my bank account, I moved and just started reaching out to see who I knew here and what I could do. And eventually I was fortunate enough to land a couple of company management jobs that kind of led to additional productions on Broadway. I started on Phantom of the Opera as the assistant company manager in 2008, I was so excited. I was like, yay! And from then on, I just kind of continued to work in company management. And then I recently joined USA early this year. So there's still a lot of things that I'm learning and a lot of questions that I still have, but it's been wonderful. And it's fascinating to kind of be on this side. And I'm really enjoying working with the members and kind of seeing the impact that what we do and what we fight for, what kind of impact that actually has on people. And just being on this side, it's refreshing. It's very refreshing. And Carl has been so generous with his time and training, and he's a great mentor. So I'm really, really excited to be here and to work with you all and represent you all. So
I'm laughing because Cathy, as a company manager, was on the other side.
The other side.
So I would often, in my role as the live performance person, when I would be in an argument with the general manager or sometimes a company manager, so it's been fascinating. Occasionally something will land on Cathy's desk that she has to call one of her former colleagues and take the opposite position. It's been a fascinating,
Yes.
but I feel so lucky. It's, I've said this to Cathy. I mean, it's like she was born for this. She is aggressive and strong and confident, and I think the members are in great hands.
Thank you, Carl. Good.
Yep.
He's a great teacher. So I remember having a conversation with Carl and Caitlin in our office a few months in, and I was like, the agents are so nice to me, because that was such a change from having to negotiate.
Right.
Yeah.
So Carl, what does that mean about you? Where are you headed? What's
God,
going on with you, buddy?
No.
Was this the bad day to ask you that?
It's a bad week. That's all right. So, I had thought about running for business agent. And I've told this story a couple times, so I'll tell it again. I really didn't think I wanted to do it, because it is a hard job. And I was at a lunch with Eddie Pierce, who is of course our new president, and I was trying to convince Eddie to run for president because I thought he'd be great. And somehow the conversation turned to business agent. And I, made some comment, no, I'm not, Cecilia keeps asking me if I want the job, and no, I don't want it. Mm-hmm. And he just looked at me and said, why not? Why not? And I started to all of a sudden think about it. And I don't know, it was a moment of weakness. And so,
for us idiots, can you tell us what exactly the business agent does?
Well, I think that, I'm still figuring that out myself, although I think I have a good idea right now. So if there's a head of a live performance department and a head of a motion picture department, and, the business agent is the board position who is responsible for the business of the union. I'm like the CEO. I'm like yeah, it ain't pretty.
Yeah, he watches over all of us.
Yeah, it's and what's
so honored to have you here today.
Yeah, it's all right. As I say, I like this group. What's challenging, and I don't say this, I'm not really saying this just because I'm in the job right now, but it's really I've been trying to look at the position and think about how can I make this better for the next person who's in this job. One of the challenges is that we are a very unique local among the IATSC. We don't just represent stagehands like Local 1, or wardrobe and costume construction people like 764, or makeup artists like 798. We represent everybody. We represent costume, scenic, projection, sound, scenic artists, motion picture, scene shops, live performance, the whole gamut. How one person can actually be the chief negotiator on a contract at the Metropolitan Opera, and literally the next day I'm negotiating the area standards contract, which is the film contract that travels around the country. It's a kind of an astonishing job, and I'm there are days I like it. This has been a hard week. Last week when we closed the Off-Broadway deal, I liked it a lot, and I liked the Met Opera rally a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited about the film negotiation. I'm also nervous. It's not the world I come from. As I've said to people, the challenge is, I know I'm a good negotiator. I know I am a skilled and strong negotiator. That part of my life, I know. I don't know the film world the way I know the live performance world, that in the middle of a negotiation, I can say, well, no, that's not how the 4-person works. I don't know how the 4-person works. Yeah. I don't know what those positions, I don't know what they do. So I'm on a deep dive to learn.
Are you getting like a crash course in film design?
I kind of am, because our most lucrative contract of the entire union is up for negotiation this summer, which is our major motion picture contract.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm kind of yeah, I'm on a deep dive, let's just say. But the thing I'm liking the most about it is I feel like we're an organization that has been I stand on very strong shoulders. Cecilia and Beverly, God bless them. They got us back with the IA. We have, $8 million in reserves. We weathered the COVID crisis thanks to the reserves and thanks to the film business. The leadership of this local over the last 20 years has been spectacular. That said, I think, I, as a human being, look to some of the social issues in a larger way. I think one of my goals is to bring the staff to a cohesive unit that I think it's not that we're not, but I think that's something I can really do. I know my strengths, and I think that's something I can really bring to the local.
Get that. I think, there's something really beautiful about what you said about, like, the thing is, like, live performance covers everybody that makes it. Like, so I think I'm excited for you to learn about how films work, but I also, I think it's really valuable that sort of the nitty gritty about how everything works on this end. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move on.
Sure.
We're all very concerned about the future. Remembering that this is not being recorded, what do you guys know about Broadway reopening? Like, do you have a sense of kind of how that's working? Yeah, probably. Which is like, oh, what's the story? Like, you have what's your inside take on figuring out kind of how that's going to work?
Cathy, Cathy, you can jump in as well. We have that's the Met Opera. We have regular meetings with the IA. We have so many Zoom meetings now, don't we? We have regular meetings with the IA. All of the unions on the street, all the IA unions on the street are meeting regularly to talk about the return to work protocols, about the contractual requests that are coming through. And do I think that there are shows that are going to start on September 14th? Yeah, I think so. What do you think, Cathy?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like, date-wise and calendar-wise, I think it's what Carl said. It's what you guys know, what's been published.
Right.
But I do.
And do we, as a person that has a literal interest in this,
yeah, you do.
Sure do. So what are you guys hearing grapevine wise about, are we, because all of the machinery has been silent for a year. Nobody's run the deck in a year. Nobody's run the follow spot in a year. What do we know about how that's going to work?
One of the challenges, and we learned this in the motion picture business, and I've had this conversation with a few of our members, we can put together a return to work protocol with the Broadway League, a kind of a general thing that's going to cover both, pay structure for when people have to come back and re-tech. And the other thing is, it's not just that the machinery's been silent for a year. There are shows that are trying to rejigger. There are shows that are trying to, can we do this show without those two wagons? Can we get rid of 3 people? Can we change the footprint? And because ideally, there was a period of time, I don't know if this is still happening, but there was a period of time where, the goal was to not have an intermission and to not have as many people backstage. I don't know if that's still kind of out there because it changes every day. I've said this in a couple meetings. I happen to be a subscriber to New York City Ballet, and I got a notice saying there'll be no intermissions And I'm like, well, that's a long night, but I don't know. I mean, maybe because I think also in a Broadway theater, I'm not worried about what's going to happen upstage of the proscenium in terms of health. I believe, and many shows have already put in a mandatory vaccination policy.
Mhm.
We as a union for our staff have a mandatory vaccination policy.
For your in-house staff or the
For our
union
staff,
membership
for our
as a
staff,
whole?
not for the members, for the
Understood.
staff that works at the union. Many companies are doing this, and many, Broadway shows are doing it with the support of a lot of the unions. I mean, obviously, to the extent allowable by law, there are legal exemptions.
Right.
But I'm not worried about what's going to happen upstage of the proscenium.
Yeah.
But what about all those people out there in the house? I mean, how
no
do
control
we
over.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. And they're going to break the rules.
Yeah.
That's just a given. That's the one thing you can know for sure.
And I think
mean,
in terms of your question, Meredith, I know that Local 1 is all over this, that there's going to have to be, a period of time where we run safety checks, where we go back in, where we, yes.
Yeah.
Because it does seem like if you're reteching a show or you're trying to streamline it or make it cheaper or whatever it is, like there is a weird little, and there's also a loophole where you're gonna be like, well, I don't need the designers in here. We can just figure it out. The stage managers have the script or whatever it is. And so I can see like a moment where it starts being an excuse to not pay designers to like take care of their work.
Well, knowing how,
I don't know what you mean.
I know it's there have been a series of back and forth proposals from the Broadway League and the unions, and I'm happy to say that the league has been negotiating against itself and revising their proposals before we even respond.
Smart.
But it's like you can't say that a designer or a director who is going to have to rethink how to transition a show should only be paid this flat small dollar amount. It's because you don't, what's the scope of the work,
Right.
So,
and interrupt their schedule, whatever it is. It's a big deal to walk back into a Broadway theater. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And one of the other challenges that we've had is, and this was similar to the film business, while I think I might have said something like this before, that while there'll be this overall thing, return to work deal, every show is going to have its peculiarities. Mm-hmm. Every show is going to have its own challenges, problems, and issues. We have more and more producers on Broadway who are connected to the West Coast, and that's good and bad. The good side is the film business has learned how to do this really well, and they have good COVID protocols, and they have good, as Cathy's last project on Diana. I mean, having a film company involved on some level. So for any of the shows that are like Wicked that has Universal, that's a good thing. It's also a bad thing because they don't understand that, like, when you're finished with a set, you can't just take it out of the theater. You need it again the next day. So, which they don't get,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting.
As we, I mean, I think we're sort of touching on it, but also the productions that are going into TAC, productions that have like either half fulfilled their contracts or are really starting from scratch. I know we're starting to hear about new productions on Broadway. Do you feel like those wheels are kind of moving at a normal pace? Do you feel like those productions are taking into account the risks around COVID, the risks around bringing people back to work? Do you feel like Broadway's coming back with like different intentions? I guess that's my real question, is like, do we feel like Broadway is coming back different or coming back the same? We're not being recorded.
I'm
Go
looking
on.
at Cathy.
I
don't know. I mean, I think the bigger thing that is changing is and a lot of this hasn't been announced. It's just, kind of what we're hearing. One, I think it's going to be gradual. I think for COVID reasons and for financial reasons, I don't think that it's going to be like someone flips the switch and there are 20 Broadway shows running.
Right.
I just don't think that's going to happen. So it will be a slow kind of ramp up, and even the shows that have announced dates, you know, there's some in September, some in October, some in November, some in December.
Mm-hmm.
The new work, I think the thing that's affecting the new work more than anything else is the social justice movement. I think that we are seeing a different kind of work and a different focus. And I hope it lasts. I hope it's not just, but so, you know, maybe it's the combination of the two that, I don't know. I think plays are going to have a really hard time for a while. I think plays are going to have a really hard time.
Yeah. I think it's just, I want to say yes, like everyone will have safety protocols and people will be safe, but I feel like there's so much changing, you know, on a day-to-day basis with regards to protocols. It's like, who knows where we'll be in the next month, 2 months, 3 months. But I think that just working on the filming of Diana, I think producers want to make people comfortable and want to make sure that, you know, there are safety protocols. I think what Carl said, I think the big variable is the front of house and the audience and things like that. But I'm hopeful, but I think again, you know, now with masks not being required, it's just who knows where we'll be and what kind of state we'll be in when shows are actually coming back.
Right. Yeah, it's impossible to know. Yeah. I think what's really neat about talking to both of you is that you really have a bird's eye view of how the industry is working, like from a specific tree, to be fair. But I think that like it is easy from the ground to feel like what you're seeing is the only piece of information. So I'm interested in what you said, Carl, about the social justice movements. Do you feel like Broadway producers are like interested in changing up their content, changing up their staffing? Like, what are you seeing from your perspective?
What I am seeing is a commitment that I've never seen before. I mean, there's been a lot of talk over the years. There's been a lot of talk on Broadway about, oh, we have to do this. We have, you know, I just feel like there is, there's a different kind of commitment and there's a different kind of reckoning. I think people understand now that you can't just say it, you have to do it. And I don't think everybody's there. I don't think but I don't know. I just have this sense. I mean, we had a meeting today, Cathy and I, with one of our employer partners about kind of this idea of, could we expand the Broadway DMC program in a way to broaden its ability to hire people from underrepresented groups.
And that's the design membership candidate, just to clarify. Right. So it's non-union folks working on Broadway.
The design membership, non-union folks on, And right now there's kind of a complicated matrix, because when we developed it on Broadway, the idea was you don't want to displace a union member. You know, you don't want a DMC to be the second lighting assistant on a musical, because that's going to put a union member out of work. You want the DMC to be the third lighting position, or the third costume assistant, or, you know, the shopper who the producer might try to get away with. But what we've also thought about is, could we create a DMC position on a production that is really geared to trying to expand the community to underrepresented, you know, folks, and expand our, let's open the doors. So we're having those conversations. And what's interesting is the employers they want to be at the table with us. They want to talk about it.
And that's different.
That's different. That's
interesting.
And I also feel like they're thinking about long-term. I feel like, yes, there have been cries in the past, and I feel like it was dismissed much more easily, where I feel like now it's not just, I was talking to a general manager of Mulert Theater, and they were like, you know, we could hire more BIPOC assistants and designers, but that doesn't change. They're trying to think of bigger ways to make a larger change with systemic racism. You know, it's not just let's hire some people for one show. Like that's not changing anything. That's not changing the way people are thinking. And so the fact that they were considering that and kind of thinking of ways to create systems and improve systems, I think was very hopeful that, you know, people are really, really engaged and really, really want to commit to a move forward and a actual change as opposed to a momentary fix, or, you know.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating. I'm going to move on because I'm doing a very bad job of going through this.
No, that's okay. No, I think you're doing, I mean, it's really a great conversation. So
yeah, it really is nice to like hear. I hope that other people agree, but I'm personally very much enjoying hearing that kind of larger view of the thing. I have a question here about the benefit fund and the Cobra boondoggle.
Oh,
but I don't know
talk about that.
Well,
I saw that
how
on the
about this?
list.
Do me a favor. Can you just tell me what the Cobra boondoggle is? Because I don't know.
I will. It's kind of moot because today's the deadline. So, but I will. Sure. So it makes total sense. It is actually, it was something that was done for the right reason. It makes total sense. But the National Benefit Fund, which is not the union, I have to remind people, benefit funds are not the union for good reason. But the National Benefit Fund, I think, did a not great job of putting out the information. And it scared people, and it was confusing, and it wasn't clear, and blah, blah, blah. Essentially, what this is all about is the American CARES Act, right? Is that right? The CARES Act has a provision in it that provides for a COBRA subsidy for 4 months, possibly longer, but at least for 4 months, for anyone in particular insurance, any blah, blah, blah. So what the NBF decided, which makes total sense, is over the last year, as many of you know, the fund has not made folks who don't have enough in their cap accounts self-pay. The fund has taken that money out of their reserves at great expense. Hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent by the fund to keep people's insurance and not ask people to cope to self-pay. You have 300 in your cap account, your premium is 800. You don't have to pay the 500. The fund would make it up. So the American CARES Act gets passed. The COBRA subsidy is part of it. What essentially that means is that for the period from June, July, August, September to October 1, the fund doesn't have to pay and you don't have to pay. The federal government's going to pay. They are going to pay for your insurance. It is a administrative, technical thing. Your insurance isn't changing. You're just being moved to what is called COBRA coverage because you're eligible for the COBRA subsidy. Everything stays exactly the same for you. At the end of that period, you go right back in the insurance. What is really confusing, aside from the fact that that wasn't clear, that it was just an administrative thing.
Everything about health insurance is confusing.
I know. This, when are we going to learn in this country? Is that there's a lot of people who were not eligible for COBRA because they may be 65, so they're eligible for Medicare. They may have a spouse who has credible coverage, but because of the cost of the spouse's insurance, they have insured their family through the IA coverage. And all of a sudden, those folks were like, I'm not eligible. What am I going to do? And what was in the fine print was, if you contact the fund, you can actually self-pay, which is what people have done So it was just a boondoggle.
That is a boondoggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like basically what happened was people who were within the system covered by the COBRA thing, nothing changed. Everything was the same. But there were exceptions that were like slightly more complicated cases that like we didn't fully understand the law because the law was new.
Correct. Correct. And it only applies to people who got relief over so if you had enough in your cap account to pay for your coverage, you didn't get this COBRA letter because you didn't get relief last quarter.
Right.
It only applied to people who got relief.
So it was like just paying out of your cap account the whole time and
Yeah.
all is well ish,
Yeah.
except that you're
Yeah.
paying for your health insurance when I guess in theory it could be free.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, that's
It's
another,
that's
a
it's
larger
quite,
problem.
It's quite a knot to untie.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Well, thank you for
Meredith?
that. And so, yes.
Meredith, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry to interrupt.
No.
So I just, because I was taking notes on this and also because healthcare is important to me, I just want to underline something because I don't think this is in the, I just reread the emails, but the cutoff is actually today, Carl.
The cutoff is actually today.
Okay. Because
I know. Today is the deadline. If you do not qualify for coverage, and this is somewhere in the, this is somewhere in the NBF's email, and it's in the second informational thing that we put together that we didn't necessarily send out because we just got this second piece recently, is that you actually have to inform the NBF by today if you want to self-pay. So if you are in the situation where you don't qualify for COBRA, the deadline to inform the NBF is today. All you have to do is call them and say, my name is so-and-so, my participant ID is so-and-so, I'm not eligible for the COBRA subsidy, I want to self-pay. You'll be fine.
so that's folks who are like eligible through their spouse or some other thing.
Correct. But they need to make that phone call today by 12 midnight tonight.
And if they don't, do they lose their health care for the quarter? Or is it like, what happens to them next?
They can either sign up for the COBRA subsidy or they will go on COBRA and
Understood.
pay.
So they would pay for the COBRA coverage, not our coverage.
Correct.
Aha.
That's the
And that
difference.
like,
Which is more expensive.
Yeah.
and that in theory would happen to them automatically. So they basically get
Correct.
more expensive health insurance
Correct.
rather than their cheaper union health insurance.
Correct.
All right. I think I understand.
That's
Correct.
the big difference is self-paying, you get to pay at the level that you're currently at
Right.
that you normally pay, whereas COBRA is a higher
More
price.
Our
Yeah.
union subsidized through because we are a union for unions.
Yeah,
are
it's a
great.
good, I mean, we have a good health plan. We really have a good health plan. But yeah. Does that
That
help,
was-
Edward?
yeah.
Does that clarify?
Yeah. I mean, I'm reviewing these emails. I don't think that today's date was in any of the emails, but
It
maybe,
wasn't in
maybe
any of
there's
the
one that I
emails. It wasn't in any of the emails that we
Okay.
sent out.
Gotcha.
It wasn't.
Good.
I think in the email that
Worth
the
amplifying.
NBF sent out, if you go to like page so-and-so, like eight,
Mhm.
I didn't even know there was an email that had like 8 pages, but one of them did apparently. And I'm just told, I don't know.
So there was an email from the NBF to us as covered members giving all this
Correct.
information.
Correct.
I understand. That said that if you don't tell them by today that you want to self-pay,
I think so.
wild.
I'm pleading ignorance. I
Yeah,
think
because the
so.
self-pay thing was not, I don't think it was clear anywhere. And I've been hearing that from like our office and things like that. So it was very confusing.
The whole issue of self-paying wasn't made clear by the NBF emails. We had to dig to find that.
Mhm. Lord.
If you want to continue your COBRA coverage because you were getting benefits, then you need to click on that email that you got and fill out some paperwork. So just remember, if you want to continue that coverage, make sure you reply to that email. I think a lot of people were like, yeah, I think
know,
people were like, I don't need to do anything, but it's like, no, there's action that you need to take to continue your coverage. So
I will guarantee you that on June 1st and 2nd, our phones are gonna go off the hook. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
It's a fucking mess.
And just as a person who doesn't run a union, is it always true that the health insurance is not so
Oh,
closely
yeah, you don't-
related
you
to
don't-
the
you
union
do
itself?
not-
So like
yeah.
IATSE also has the same relationship with their benefits.
You don't
This is
want
like a
your
normal
union-
thing.
No, you do not want your union to run your benefit funds. No, no, no.
I
No,
understand.
no. We are negotiators. We are labor people. You want actuaries and trustees who know what they're. I mean, I'm a trustee on our pension fund,
Right.
but even when we had our own health plan, like we have our own pension plan now, it is actually a separate entity from the union for legal reasons. You do not.
Mhm.
We don't want to mix the two.
Got it.
The challenge with the health plan, because it's not our own health plan, we do not have a trustee on the health plan trustees. So we actually don't have a say in all of these decisions on the health plan.
Wow. Okay.
There are no IA locals who have a trustee on the IA plan. The trustees are international vice presidents.
Wow. Interesting. Health insurance.
But it's a really good plan.
It is.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to move away from that because
Please.
I suspect the conversation might continue in the chat, but just like I want to talk about the Met because I think that that's been a really interesting. Can you give me a brief 3-point history of what happened at the Met and what happened at the Met during lockdown and what is happening at the Met now for those of us who sort of maybe don't know all the details?
I think the thing that you actually have to roll back a little farther and remember that in the 12 years I've been at the union, I've been involved in 1, 2, 3 Met negotiations prior to this. And at every one of those negotiations, the Met has asked for relief. You know, the first was 2010 or 11, right after the 2008 crash. And it's after 2008 and we need help. We need the unions to help us. So, you know, we gave you some relief. And then 2000.
And by relief, you mean you like put some provisions in the contract that allowed them to spend less money?
We gave them rollbacks. We gave freezes. We didn't take as much, we helped them because they were in dire financial shape because of the 2008 crisis. Okay, we're all going to share in that pain. Okay, we won't get 3% every year. We'll take a freeze for 2 years and then get 4% over, whatever it is.
Right, whatever it is.
And then in 2014, they came to us and said, we have to rethink how we do business. We have to completely, we need help. So we had this whole long negotiation and it was all about shared sacrifice and we're all gonna, give and we worked out these formulas where we rolled back our wages like 17% and then we clawed it back over time. And here we are, again, in 2020, 2021, and, they still are having problems. And, there gets to be a point that you have to say, what's the common denominator here?
Yep.
And the common denominator is Peter Gelb and the management of the Met. And why, after we have given relief over the last 2 cycles, are you asking for relief again? And not only are you asking for relief because of the pandemic, you're asking for permanent cuts. You are asking to gut people's contract. It's disgraceful. It is.
This is permanent cuts to the union, the IATSE staff, or is it also
correct.
apply to designers? Just the house guys.
Our contract at the Met is unique. We have 3 units that are all part of our unit. We have the scenic artists who are obviously in the shop painting. We have freelance designers who design the operas, and we have resident designers. They want all of us to take huge cuts, and they want to change our work rules. Let's get rid of overtime. Let's change. The Met is one of the only contracts that for freelance designers that still count sets and count costumes. They want to change that. They want to, a costume designer at the Met can make a lot of money, and they want to say the new fee is like $12,000 or $15,000. It's horrible. So they locked Local 1 out, and I think this is public knowledge, so I can say it. There was a point in the negotiation where President Claffey of Local 1 called Peter Gelb or Howard Robbins, the lawyer, or somebody, and said, so if I give you a 30% cut, are we done? And they said no, because what they want to do is actually gut the contract. They want to get rid of the work rules. And the reason the stagehands make so much at the Met is not because the rate is so high. It's because the Met is mismanaging and there is so much overtime. Those stagehands work 18-hour days. I mean, it is not because the rates are high. It's because of the way the opera is produced, and
Uh-huh.
they don't
You
want
mean
to have
like
that
how they're programming changeovers or
Yeah.
Mhm.
On a typical day at the Met Opera, the stage crew comes in the morning and they do touch-ups and they load it, they tech, and then in the afternoon there's a changeover which involves not just the carpenters but the whole stage crew, and they change the set over, and there's usually then touch-ups that happen before the curtain that night. Sometimes there are quick rehearsal things that happen if new singers are coming in, but all of that happens. So they've changed over once. They do the performance, and then at 11 or 11:30 at night, they change it over again so that it's ready for the next day. The set is in place. I mean, maybe they shouldn't do 7 operas in 7 days. Maybe they should do 2 operas in 7 days, or 3 operas, or 6. I mean, it's not good. And we're not gonna help them anymore. I mean, could the Met go under? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, they're in trouble. They are in trouble, but they're not in trouble because of us.
And can you talk to us about the protests the other day, last week, 2 weeks ago? What is time?
Thursday. It was great. It's great.
Great.
So that was, as I understood, it was stagehands, but a lot of us came out in solidarity. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was organized by Local One because they're the ones who are actually locked out. And
like physically cannot get into their lockers.
That is,
they don't want anybody in the building.
That's a phrase. It is the management side of a strike. A union strikes, manager locks out. So essentially, the Met Opera management said, we are at what's called impasse negotiations. So we're going to lock you out. And what that allowed the Met to do was to subcontract the building of the 3 new productions to a non-union shop in California and to 2 shops in Wales. They sent our jobs overseas in the middle of a pandemic.
Classy.
That's
what I would expect of a well-renowned opera house.
Yeah, no, it's bad.
That's nuts.
It's
and
bad.
What's your sense of where that standoff is now post-protest?
I think that they are starting to realize that they might have misplayed their hand. I don't know. Who's going to load? So those 3 operas that were built in California and Wales are in early June going to start to make their way across the country or across the ocean. Who do you think is going to load them into the Met?
Right. Where are they going to get the scabs for that?
Where
the machinery?
Are the Teamsters going to touch those sets? I don't think so.
Right.
I think it's all going to come to a head in June.
Yeah.
Which, okay, going back to my job, it's all going to come to a head in June while I'm in the middle of the area standards negotiation, which is based in California. So I'm negotiating from 12 noon to 12 midnight every day. And I guarantee you the Met's going to happen at the same time.
Right. Cathy, you've really walked yourself into a bog here.
Yeah, she has.
I'm happy to help however I can.
Yeah.
And do you feel like a lot of these labor issues have, like, kind of in a macro view, like because of the pandemic, become more pronounced? Or do you think that, like, this was a reckoning on its way, not only about the Met, but also in a sort of larger view, in talking about these things on Broadway? And I think a lot of us have been experiencing, like, oh, we got a second to stop working. Why was it so bad?
I think labor is actually in an interesting place right now. I actually think we're at a good time for the labor movement. I think the pandemic has showed us how important health benefits are, how important it is to have unemployment insurance, how important it is to work on W-2 so that you actually have all of those benefits. I look at some of the successes that some of our sisters and brothers and kin have had in the teachers unions, at the AFL-CIO. I think we're in a good time. I mean, historically, we are at a difficult time in the labor movement, but yet the last year.
I was going to say, it hasn't been great for labor the last 30 or 40 years.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't. But the last couple of years have been interesting. And I'm hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
I also think the social justice movement is going to fuel the labor movement.
Yes.
I think when you look at the intersection between social justice issues and the labor movement, we must be aligned, and it will only help both sides. We are in this together. And so I think it's interesting kind of what's happening in the country right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, Carl. I think that they go hand in hand, and I think people are just kind of reevaluating a lot of things in treatment, and so I think they go hand in hand as well, and it's sparking a bigger movement.
And Kathy, how do you feel like our union is like addressing some of those questions? Like, do you feel like we're taking them on as well? And what do you feel like the union is doing?
Yeah, I think just kind of learning what I have in the past couple of months, I think the USA has been great about kind of trying to be a step forward. I know that there's a lot of catch up to be done. And I know for me, I have to remind myself as well as remind other people, this is a process. This is going to take years, but I feel confident that we are putting and implementing things that will help.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we have a diversity committee to focus on this is amazing, that people can join and reach out to. The fact that we have this new management candidate program Off-Broadway, I think it's a huge step. The fact that we're speaking with Broadway theaters, Lower theaters about expanding it, I think that's something that we as a union could do. We can't force employers to do something or treat people, but that's something that we can do to kind of guide that conversation. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. And tell me a little bit about the diversity committee in the union. Like, what is their kind of stated goal? Like, what is their role within? Were they involved in the Off-Broadway negotiations? Do they operate separately? Like, kind of how is that working? Their members.
They are one of our really vibrant independent committees, and I would actually encourage Wingspace to invite Alejandro and Dante. If you have an open salon, to come and talk about the work of that committee. It's one of the long-standing committees at the union. It's the diversity committee and the respectful workplace committee that have been in place for a long time. They weren't necessarily involved in the formation of the membership candidate program, but I think it's in part due to the diversity committee that the issues have stayed front and center at the union. And so it by virtue of the fact that we have this committee and it is out there, it kind of keeps all of us like right here. We have to be thinking of this every day. There was something I was going to say about that, about diversity, about like one of the things that I am really proud about was we had a little altercation with a little skit on Broadway called Hamilton. And to settle that little altercation, I said, they wanted to say, okay, we're going to pay this money and we'll make a donation to the Actors Fund. And I said, well, I have this idea. Why don't you instead give me that money to fund a diversity training program, an anti-racism training program for the union? And, thanks to that, we have launched, we partnered with Nicole Brewer, and we've launched this really exciting anti-racism training module available to the members, which will, be available all year. And, we have to do more things we have to think outside the box. So yeah, there you go.
If you haven't signed up for the anti-racist training and you're a member, you should sign up. It's available.
Yeah. If you haven't signed up, sign up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also going to say just to everybody, if you're tired of listening to me talk or not, but please do raise your hand if you have a question. I'm going to keep interrogating these very game humans. Just a question about, in case people want to get involved, like how does the committees work within the like structure of the union? Like, do they make recommendations to you? Do you have like a meeting with all the committees? Like as a Wingspace member, I know that like we manage a kind of organization with a number of tendrils. And so I'm sort of curious about how it works in a even larger octopus.
You know, it's interesting, and I've thought that this actually would be a good topic for, you know, a general membership meeting or a special meeting or something. So when I came in as the national business agent, there was also kind of a major turnover of the board. A number of the established folks who had been on the board for many years chose not to run again. So there were many positions up. And, you know, I'm very proud to say that we now have 5 or 6 BIPOC members on the board. 5, I think it is.
Out of how many?
Out of 17. Is Emma still here? No, I think that's right. But that's 5 from 0. So,
well, that's an increase.
That's an increase. We turned over about half the board in the last election, and President Pierce, Edward Pierce, along with Vice President Deirdre Govan, have really kind of they've been rethinking the whole governance structure, and part of that is committee work. It is the board's empowering more committees to kind of go off and come back to the board with ideas, initiatives, recommendations. And that's happening also on the regional level. I see Secretary Robin here of the Eastern Region Board. We have really invigorated Eastern Region Board, Central Region Board, Western Region Board. So the boards go off and kind of come up with their ideas, and then they take an initiative or a plan or something. They have an idea. They take it to the executive board, of which I sit on. So then we kind of mull it over. What's it going to cost? How can the staff deal with it? You know, and then we may implement some idea like anti-racism training. So it's kind of a, you know, we have to let the committees do their work. It's an octopus. That's a great. You know, you have to let each tentacle do their thing and then come back and say, okay, here's this idea. And some of them we can implement right away. And some of them we have to put on, you know, a side burner for a while.
And how do people just volunteer? Is it a kind of, you know, like if you go to the committee page that I noticed, Natalie just put the information in the chat, like you just are like, this looks awesome. Like, I would love to be a part of this.
Yes, you can put your name on a list to volunteer, and that will be considered, and we appoint people to the boards. Essentially, and this is there are legal reasons for all of this, but it's very important that the executive board appoint board members. Part of it is, you know, you sometimes might have to non-appoint somebody. And so, so you need a process. I mean, we are learning a lot right now about process and about reporting and about, so yes, so that's how you do it. You express your interest. It may, right now, these committees have been appointed for the foreseeable future. So it may be a few months before you heard anything. But then you may get a call and say, or if you're still interested in serving, we're going to appoint you to this board.
Well, Natalie is offering in the chat that national committee members are paid for their work. So it's not just a like donation of your time, but actually it's almost like applying for a small
it's
gig.
not a lot of money. Thank you for that, Natalie. It's not a lot of money. It's a very small at this point stipend.
You play P&W.
Yeah, but we believe as a union, we have to pay people for their work. And
yeah, absolutely.
So this was a big change in the governance structure that this executive committee, this executive board put into place.
This is a recent development.
It's a very recent development. Committees have not been paid until this year. And we changed the structure of how board members are paid. I mean, the executive board now meets every 2 weeks. We meet every 2 weeks. It's mind-boggling. We meet every 2 weeks. But that's a big time commitment. And we also are involved in committee work. And so I think that part of what we realized was these are professionals. We have to compensate people for the work they're doing. And we're not paying, huge amounts of money, but it's important. It's important as a union that we recognize that.
I also think that like when you pay people, then you lower the barrier to entry, right? Like not everybody's got a lot of free time. Most people's time, it is necessary that they continue to earn money during most of their physical day.
That's so right, Meredith. It's the gatekeeping thing. You can't put a barrier up that is going to keep somebody from volunteering because they're not yet.
Yes, there's a reason there's a certain type classically associated with volunteer work.
That's exactly right.
I wanted to go back to kind of what is happening in the future, because I know we talked about Broadway for a minute, but as you guys are seeing the kind of general landscape, and not everybody works on Broadway, so I did want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of the New York theater. Oh my God, your dog is really cute. There was a little performance back there.
That's Holly. Yeah.
But the New York theater is going back to work. The regional theater is going back to work. I know we have a Mulert contract coming up. Kind of like what's ahead and beyond us as we move forward into the brave new COVID world. Cathy, since it's now your job.
I think it's going to vary depending on regions, some just because of, municipal and state governance, it could change place to place. But I think Carl mentioned that there's a tour planning up in, was it July?
August 1.
What? Which tour? Can you tell us?
Wicked, Dallas.
Wicked.
Yeah.
And Dallas, they don't care in Dallas.
Right. That's why I was like, Florida,
I've heard some whisperings of this sort of thing. Go on.
So I think I feel we're getting contracts. We're getting questions from employers saying, what do I need to do this? What's my safety protocol? Like, what do I have to submit? And just kind of seeing the increase of inquiries and contracts being submitted, it's great. And people are starting to kind of navigate it as we move forward. And I think, again, it's tricky because it varies so much from place to place. And, are you inside? Are you outside?
Right.
And things like that. So it's ever changing, but I feel like we're on the path to get live theater across the nation starting back up. Some places have already started with outdoor productions. So it'll be interesting, but I think it's a good sign. But I was very surprised when I heard about the tour going up in August 1st. So
yeah,
oh my God,
it's very soon.
It's very soon. I saw those pictures on Corey Paddocks and Alex Koch. I can't remember who Alex, one of those Alexes, Instagram of Tuacahn in Utah. And at first it freaked me out because I saw all those people unmasked.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, it's outside. They're all outside.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Utah, but they're all outside. And I don't know. I'm fully vaccinated. Would I sit there outside? I think I might.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more nervous about, and I will admit this as a human being, I am a little nervous about sitting in a Broadway house.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I won't do it, but I'm a little nervous about it.
Right.
I mean, I think we've all done enough haze tests to understand what the airflow in those places is like.
Exactly.
And that's the other thing is just because we have everything in place and people start back up, we have no idea how the audiences will react, right?
No.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a learning curve once we start opening up, seeing if people are willing to come and are excited to come, or if we see that maybe we need to wait. I think it's going to be a little bit of a trial and error, but yeah, that's the other thing. It's like, do you want to sit inches away from someone at this point, even if you're vaccinated?
Yeah. And Meredith, I think you said a really, astute thing, which is we've all been in those theaters when that haze happens and when that fog happens. And we know how bad the ventilation is. And we also know after 14 months that this is not a disease that is passed on by touch. This is not, we don't really have to worry about touching. It is an air disease. This is all about particulates in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't bode well for Broadway.
It does not. I mean, this is hyper specific Broadway musical based question, but like, what are you hearing about Hayes? Because I know when we started talking about, coming back on Hadestown and also mounting the tour, like for a while there, we were getting word like no haze, no fog, which is tricky on a musical about going to hell. So I'd be curious to know. I'm sure that the lighting designers of the world know more about this already than I do, but.
Well, all I can say is no comment.
Aha. Good to know.
We are in the middle of negotiating the return to work protocols with all of the IA locals.
Mm-hmm.
And I can assure you that haze and fog are
very much on the table.
Yeah. But and I also know, I will also say, and I'm constantly kind of reminding people of this, in part because I spent a lot of years as an agent, and some of my biggest clients were lighting designers, Broadway lighting designers. Lighting designers didn't ask to be in charge of haze. It just kind of got dumped on them. And, it's like, oh, it's electric. You plug it in. So it's lighting. And they're not scientists. They're not, I think that's partly what is so frightening right now is this isn't what we do. We're
not in charge of the health of the audience.
Yeah, exactly. Don't put that on me.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting also, like, and you think about returning to work on Broadway and whether people have to go back into tech, like, I think that there's a very strong argument to be made that if you eliminate haze and fog, that affects every designer in every department. That's effectively going to have to retech a show. Like the costumes are going to change color. Like it's a whole ball game. So I'll be curious to see. We have sort of.
What are they going to pay? And what are they going to pay you to recheck that show, Meredith? That's what I want to know.
What are they going to pay me? Is what I want.
Well, they'll pay you. I think you hit the nail on the head before. They might pay you. They won't pay your designer. That's what really worries me. Is anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Kathy's problem. It's Kathy's problem.
Kathy, are you going to renegotiate Lord on your own? Is that your new?
Extended the Lord contract till next 2023? No.
Oh, so you have a little bit of you have a little time to like.
Right. It wasn't due until we negotiated a year. Is it 22 now or 23? I can't remember.
Yeah, but we have some time. So
some time to line your horses up along the battlefield.
Traditionally, that is so the national business agent is the chief negotiator for all of the national contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So Lort, Broadway. This is one of the things that I'm kind of thinking about as to how do you make this job actually a job that a human being could do.
One person job.
And it might be that actually it would make sense for Kathy to be the chief negotiator of Lort, but I wouldn't wish that on anyone who'd never been through the Lort negotiation once. So we'll probably do it together this first time, and then she can do it alone the next time.
Natalie, our local union expert, is letting us know that it's going through 2023.
Great.
So
that's what I thought.
Thank you, Natalie.
You got a deadline
really far away.
extension.
I was like, 2023, is that right?
And do you have so it's hard to know now because again, like I feel like
Kerman?
the industry
When
is
is
such a mess.
Wait, say again, Meredith, I'm sorry.
I was saying, no. I feel like it's like we don't really know what's going to happen in the next 2 years. So it's like hard to know what the priorities are going to be.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons that I can't remember if it was their idea, Kathy, or ours. I don't remember, but we again, it's a very amicable relationship with Lort, and we kind of all felt, and our Lort, we called a meeting of our Lort negotiation committee from 3 years ago when this was kind of as an idea, and they all said across the board, this was a great contract. We made huge gains in the last negotiation. Extend a year. Because if we had negotiated in 2022, we probably would be forced to take rollbacks.
Mm-hmm.
By waiting another year, hopefully those theaters will have an opportunity to get their legging again, to get on their feet, and we won't have to take a rollback.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There were several theater contracts across the country, the smaller independent contracts, that we agreed to extend it because it would not be beneficial to our members. As Carl said, it would only have hurt us to go into negotiations in this time. So
Right. That's crazy. Makes a lot of sense. Well, Carl, I don't know, it is 8:30, so this is kind of the end of our formal session. So Carl and Kathy, thank you so much. We're gonna hang around for another half an hour. We'll keep the room open. So if people have questions, also I'm delighted to continue yammering with you guys forever. It's been a real pleasure. But yeah, so if I know, Carl, you may need
I
to
have
take
to
off,
run.
you let me know.
Yeah, I have to go. I'm sorry. I just want to thank everybody and say again how grateful I am to Wingspace and to all of you for you know, kind of what you do. And you know, we're gonna get some of them right and some of them wrong, and just, you know, don't tar and feather us.
No, we thank you also for all your work, and thank you for coming to speak to us today. It's
Sure,
really
of
a big
course.
deal, and it's really helpful for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Carl and Kathy, for joining us. Yeah, we will keep the Zoom open for a little bit if folks want to hang out. I understand Carl has to go. I just want to thank, in addition to Carl, members of the Salons Committee, Christine Mock, for helping me run this meeting, and E.L. Hone, and especially to Kate Pitt for taking meticulous notes during this meeting, which we will be able to distribute to people who couldn't make it. Thank you so much, Kate. Also to Tanya Orellana, Rodrigo Hernandez-Martinez, and Driftmeyer. Yeah, there's a bunch of links in the chat. We also have a mentorship program currently accepting applicants. So if you know any emerging artists who don't have existing networks in New York, Wingspace is trying to help out as many people. We've doubled the size of our mentorship program this year. So we will put a link to that in the chat. And with that, Carl, leave.
I'm going to leave. I just thought of one more thing I just want to say as a parting gift. We have just hired our first ever communications director at USA 829, because we believe that we've not been singing our message well. I really mean it, that if people have feedback, ideas, you know, whether it comes to me or to Kathy, we're going to hold a bunch of open forums with Josh once he's on staff at the beginning of June. And we want to hear from people, what's worked, what hasn't worked, how can we better communicate, how can we better talk to our members, how can we, so I just want to, I think that's a real big piece of it. How can we be more a part of you? So there you go.
That's great. Thank you, Carl. That's really good information. And
Meredith,
I think, like,
it's been so enjoyable with you.
Such a pleasure. Maybe one day I'll see you in real life. You never know.
Life. Yeah, exactly. Okay. I'm gonna bag out. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Edward. Yep.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone has any questions that I might be able to answer, but if not, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we've been monitoring we have a couple of viewers on Facebook, but no questions have come in that way. I don't think we have any in the chat. Christine, did you get any? Or Meredith?
No, I think we were just too thorough, really.
Yeah.
I think it's because the issues are really simple. So we just, you know, they were just easy to cover. There's nothing tricky or complicated about the union, and
and you guys know how to reach out to us if there's any further questions that come up. You know, it's not a secret. So if anyone needs to ask a clarifying question or a follow-up.
Kathy, I didn't get exactly when did you start? Did you really start middle pandemic?
I started unofficially in November. At the end of November was when I took
of 2020. Of
2020 is when I started kind of onboarding, and then I started officially January. So it's great because I'm glad Carl was here, because there's stuff that he's answering and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's good to know. So it's been a huge learning curve, and it's been fascinating.
It's a wild time to be thrown into this particular cesspool. So we appreciate you very, very much. And we're really excited to see what you're going to do.
It's hard to get a word in edgewise with Carl. Was there something that you meant to say that he
I don't know what you're talking about. I think he's more, he carries on, and I'm more of a, hey, this is my answer, but I'm always happy to engage further if people have questions and stuff. So it's funny.
Well, People can feel free to turn on your videos and wave and say
Wave
hello.
at us.
But if
We'd be
we
happy
don't have
to.
any questions going on, we can
I like
probably-
Leanne is like literally, I don't know, 20 feet away from me right now. The Wingspace studio is well represented today.
I do just want to reiterate that the notes that were taken tonight by Kate Pitt, I have linked them in the chat since this was not recorded. So if you came in late or want to review anything, Kate Pitt takes absolutely amazing notes. So I promise you, you will find useful information in there.
So feel
Thank you
free
so
to
much.
share with any USA member. Say, share with your local theater manager.
Yes. Yeah. No one on the other side of the table, at least until they've ratified the agreements.
Yeah. We ratified on our end. We're just waiting for the Off-Broadway League. So
And the Off-Broadway League ratifies like next.
the 24th is when they're scheduled to have a meeting. So hopefully. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I hope everyone has
Yes.
a lovely evening.
Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Kathy.
No problem. Hope to see everyone in person soon.
Great. Thank you.
Hope so.